Welcome to Solo News Day with Kevin Clark. I am Kevin Clark.
Woo-woo. Yeah.
I've never seen a photo of Sam Darnold where he's not just absolutely petrified. Look at this. This man has seen Adam Gase game plans that would send a chill down your spine.
And she's very insistent, as she says, you are unhappy in your career. You are unhappy in your line of work. It doesn't suit you. And my friends are laughing. And she's like, shut up, listen.
All right, Bob Costas, legend, host of HBO's new show Back on the Record. This week he's got Ken Burns. He's got Carmelo Anthony. How does it feel, Bob, to be back on the record? What has this journey been like for you so far?
Hasn't been that much of a journey. Just reconnecting with many of the same people. Yeah. We hope it's some combination of all the things that I've done at various times in my career, except for the play-by-play part. So it's terrific.
We might be witnessing some sort of sea change in sports media after the last 2 weeks, only because of the Manning cast, which I think is a Black Swan event. It's like one of one because it's Peyton Manning and he's so entertaining and he can do this. Right. But I think everyone else is going to try to steal the model now. I think maybe people might learn the wrong lessons from it. Could this change anything, Bob?
Well, I think you're right. It's a business of imitation. And very often what they are imitating is the one and only. And everybody's looking for the next Tony Romo. And it's a combination, A, of Romo's personality, and B, the fact that he's fresh off the field. So he isn't recognizing this stuff from film study. He's recognizing it from having played against it. He recognizes defenses he saw in effect yesterday, and he's talking about it today. It's a unique combination of circumstances, but almost everything in this business that's successful at all or praised at all breeds imitation. So I imagine we will see some attempt, not just in football, but in other sports, to do it this way. In fact, Major League Baseball, now that I think of it, did it first with the CC Sabathia Clubhouse broadcasts, which have been very successful. It's a smaller audience because a regular season, midweek baseball game doesn't get the same kind of audience. Can it be done? Yeah. Can it be done at the Manning level? You said it yourself, Kevin. It's Peyton Manning, and Eli isn't that bad either. And by the way, when Peyton Manning picks up the phone and says, hey, Brett Favre, we need you. Hey, Charles Barkley, we need you. That's an easy booking because it's Peyton Manning.
If you could have taken any athlete you've ever watched, been around, seen, interviewed, and give them a Manning cast, who would you have given it to?
You know who would have been great on basketball, especially college basketball? Jim Valvano. So funny, so spontaneous. That's just a name that pops into my head. Barkley, an obvious name, but he more or less has that leeway as it is now. After we're done with this, I'll think of 10 others and be kicking myself.
So I read a bunch of interviews you've done over the past couple of years, and you've made a couple references to how everything you've done lives on YouTube now, and things have gotten rediscovered that you've done. Yeah. And I'm curious what the most startling thing you've come across or heard about of Bob Costas YouTube, where you say, either I forgot that happened or I don't want that on YouTube. When you hear feedback on YouTube, where do you start, Bob?
Well, the thing that's most gratifying and that quite honestly I hear about most often is the old later broadcasts. There are dozens and maybe by now hundreds of old laters floating around on YouTube. And I hear a lot of really appreciative comments about it. And sometimes I hear from the subjects of the interviews themselves. Someone of theirs has pointed out that they were on. I hear from Richard. I've heard Richard Lewis twice. It was a different kind of show, and people really enjoy being on it. And it has an audience that still lives, I guess.
Is there anything you'd nuke from YouTube?
Yeah, and I knew it at the time, but I didn't have to worry in 1991 about what you have to worry about now. I'll leave aside Pink Eye because the whole world saw Pink Eye in Sochi in 2014. So we don't need YouTube for that. And there's nothing I can do about it except be good-natured about it and put up with all the ridiculous theories about how I got it. The one thing that has popped up on YouTube that I thought would have been buried also had something to do with my eyes, now that I think of it. The first NBA championship on NBC in 1991, the Bulls are playing the Lakers. The Bulls win at the Forum in Game 5. So it's the first of the 6 Bulls titles. Immediately afterward, the production people at NBC apologized to me. They sent me into the locker room, tiny, tiny visitors' locker room at the old Forum. There was one cameraman with his portable camera on his shoulder and no support staff. All right. So I'm looking for Phil Jackson. I'm looking first and foremost for Michael Jordan. And I'm standing up on a bench to try and see over all these 6'8", 6'9" guys. And everybody was in there. Their children, their wives, their girlfriends, their entourage, everybody was in there. And they were packed shoulder to shoulder. You could barely move. And they're in my ear going, find Michael, find Michael. And it's like, where's Waldo? I can't find Michael in the midst of all this. So I must have interviewed a half dozen different Bulls before I finally see Michael Jordan, who is sitting on the floor or on some very low bench, clutching the championship trophy. And his father, whom I had met several times before, is leaning off his right shoulder. And off his left shoulder is a woman, and I'm looking at Michael, and so she's just the corner of my eye, and my eyes are filled with champagne. They've already doused me. So I'm trying to blink like crazy, and I say, and I shouldn't have, Michael Jordan, surrounded by his mom and his dad, and then Michael goes, my wife. And I quickly apologize. And he couldn't have been nicer. His wife at that time, not only was she very cool in the moment, but Michael hosted Saturday Night Live a few months later. And I was sitting in the audience at 30 Rock for the live show. And Juanita was only a few seats away. And I went over and said hello, and she could not have been more gracious about the whole thing. But, there's a few things you want to mulligan out of thousands and thousands of things. You want to do over. I would like to do that one over. I've now alerted your whole audience, and they're going to Google it and find it.
We'll bury it. We're going to bury it. I want to talk about the NBA on NBC theme. I heard you referenced how you had these intros, they were profound, and then the NBA on NBC theme, Round Ball Rock, would just, boom, just explode right into it.
This is the NBA on NBC.
Did that Round Ball Rock make everything you said about 5 to 10% cooler?
No question about it. Hats off to John Tesh. It's one of the great themes in the history of television, let alone sports television, and a perfect punctuation. So I knew when I was writing these little lead-ins, I knew that they were going to be punctuated by da-na-na-na-na-na-na. I don't think it's an overstatement. This word's thrown around all the time and it doesn't always apply, but it was iconic.
No, 100%. One thing on YouTube I need to bring up. There is a Notre Dame, Florida State intro that you did where you wrote a poem.
And so you worked and you sacrificed, pointing toward that day in the fall when all of America would be watching you.
And it is completely against everything else that happened in modern television after that, but it is amazing. And I'm curious, did you do that because it was 1 versus 2 in 1993, or did you write a lot of poems back then for intros?
No. And I didn't really write that one, to be perfectly honest.
Wow! I've been watching this for a decade on YouTube. Okay, go ahead.
I wrote or ad-libbed virtually everything I did, except it was just boilerplate stuff, leads and tags during the Olympics or stuff like that, where I might just edit it a little bit or ad-lib around it. But most of my stuff is my own, especially those NBA things and World Series lead-ins. That was an epic game on a Saturday afternoon. I think it is still, there has not been a higher rated or as nearly high rated regular season college football game since. And that was 1993, I guess. And it was number 1 against number 2. It was at Notre Dame. It was, kind of that perfect kind of autumn day. But Bill Bonnell, a longtime producer at NBC, put the whole thing together. And this idea, like, this is the kind of game you dream of on Main Street. And they more or less handed me the script. And I couldn't change it too much because they had shot all these beautiful pictures. And it wasn't just like stuff they pulled from the archives. They went out and shot this like they were shooting a movie. I actually thought it was a little over the top, but I couldn't disrespect all the effort and talent that went into it. Part of Bill and the rest of these people. The credit doesn't really belong to me.
When's your birthday, Bob?
March 22nd. I'm early Aries.
Early Aries? By 1 day. This is a moment of letting go and bringing things to conclusion, Aries. Look around your life and see what habits or issues have lingered for too long and show them the door.
Wow. Does that mean I should cut this interview short right now? We need some kind of closure.
Don't even
Kevin, I'd like
Zoom?
to take this opportunity to announce my retirement from broadcasting. You've convinced me Who doesn't believe random items that appear in the horoscope? I was walking down the street after the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992. A group of us who had worked on the broadcast, maybe a dozen of us, went to a dinner in Little Italy in New York. We're walking down the street and we're in the afterglow of a very successful Olympics, and things went pretty well for me. I was the first time as primetime host for me. We'd had our wine and whatnot. It's probably close to midnight, and there's a fortune teller on the corner. The group decides that I should have my fortune told. So I sit down and she starts reading my palm, and she's very insistent as she says, "You're unhappy in your career. You are unhappy in your line of work. It doesn't suit you." And my friends are laughing. And she's like, "Shut up, listen. Either you listen to me or things will go very, very badly for you. Do you understand me?" And I was getting frightened. "Yeah, of course I understand. Yes, you must immediately reconsider your career." So she got the $10 and I left. But I didn't take her advice, luckily.
I think this is a pretty bad fortune teller.
Yeah,
You've done the
pretty
worst
bad.
one. All right, last thing, we do a thing called Club Kevin Bob. It is just whoever is winning the week or the month, doesn't matter. They could be in sports. It could not be in sports.
You know, you can't go wrong with Shohei Ohtani or Vladimir Guerrero. You know, Ohtani is clearly the player of the year. Ohtani's an historic player, more significant than Guerrero, but Guerrero could win the Triple Crown and the Blue Jays could make the playoffs. So I'll go, as a baseball guy, I'll go with Ohtani and Guerrero winning the week or the month.
I love that, the Cy Young and the MVP of Club Kevin. That's great. It's been an absolute delight. We are such huge fans. We cannot wait to watch the show on Friday. Back on the Record with Bob Costas. We appreciate your time.
HBO, 11 Eastern, right after Bill Maher.
Boom.